The Berlin Open. When one player changed everything, nobody saw it coming. What was supposed to be a quiet, unremarkable week of preparation before the Berlin Open turned into one of the most electrifying stories professional tennis had seen in years. A wave of high-profile withdrawals crashed through the tournament without warning, forcing officials into emergency mode. Seedings were overhauled. Vacant spots were hastily filled. The draw was torn apart and rebuilt almost overnight, sending players, coaches, and fans scrambling to make sense of the chaos. When the revised bracket finally dropped, everyone rushed to study it. For most players, it was simply another curveball in a sport that never stops throwing them. New opponents, rearranged schedules, unexpected paths forward. That is professional tennis, unpredictable by nature, unforgiving by design. But for Alex Eala, this was different. The moment she studied the updated draw, something caught her eye. A detail that most fans had completely missed. A small but significant shift buried within what looked like routine administrative housekeeping. Within hours, that overlooked detail ignited a firestorm. Speculation spread across social media like wildfire. Fans dissected every corner of the revised draw, debating who had gained the most and who had been quietly disadvantaged. Some defended the decisions as fair and unavoidable under the circumstances. Others weren't so sure. The longer the debate ran, the more one name kept appearing at the center of it. Alex Eala. And then she spoke. Rather than doing what so many athletes do, staying quiet, keeping her head down, letting the storm pass, Alex chose a different path. She stepped forward and addressed the situation directly, and the moment she did, the entire tennis world stopped and listened. Her words sparked immediate reaction. Supporters praised her courage. Critics argued the controversy was being inflated beyond its actual importance. But whether people agreed with her or not, one undeniable truth emerged from the noise. She had everyone's attention. And she wasn't finished yet. The atmosphere surrounding the Berlin Open grew heavier by the hour. Every new development fed fresh speculation. Every statement raised more questions than it answered. And through it all, curiosity about Alex Eala's next move continued building to a fever pitch. What exactly had she seen in that draw? Was there something deeper happening behind closed doors? And could this controversy define the entire tournament? The answers were coming. But by the time they did, the whole world was already watching. At first glance, the technical details appeared straightforward. Alex remained in the bottom half of the draw. Her potential path through the tournament still led toward a collision with one of the event's biggest names. Nothing on paper screamed injustice. But the real story wasn't on paper. According to sources close to the situation, while tournament officials scrambled to manage the fallout from multiple withdrawals, certain players were quietly granted scheduling security and logistical support to help stabilize their preparations. Practice courts confirmed. Warm-up routines protected. Schedules locked in so there would be no last-minute surprises. Alex Eala, reportedly, was not extended the same consideration. Practice times could change without warning. Court availability could shift at the last moment. Preparations that most players treated as standard and guaranteed suddenly became uncertain and fluid. For a recreational player, these might seem like minor inconveniences. But at the highest level of professional tennis, where margins are razor-thin and every session matters, uncertainty is not a minor inconvenience. It is a competitive disadvantage. Those close to Alex described a growing frustration, not a rage-fueled outburst, but something quieter and arguably more powerful. A deep, steady disappointment from a player who felt she was once again being asked to climb the same mountain with one hand tied behind her back. And this wasn't new. According to those who had followed her journey closely, the Berlin Open was simply the latest chapter in a longer story, a series of setbacks, scheduling complications, and difficult situations that had quietly accumulated over recent months. She had weathered criticism from unexpected places. She had navigated pressures that many of her peers never faced. Through all of it, she had remained composed, professional, and focused. For a long time, she chose silence over confrontation. But something about this moment felt different. Something had shifted. And when the pre-event press conference arrived, It became clear that Alex Eala was no longer willing to stay quiet. Journalists arrived expecting the usual routine: match previews, surface conditions, tournament expectations, the kind of press conference that disappears from memory before the reporters even reach their cars. What they got instead was something nobody had prepared for. The moment Alex stepped in front of the cameras, the energy in the room changed. Her expression was composed, calm, measured, controlled. But there was a gravity behind her eyes that silenced the room before she even spoke a single word. Reporters who had attended hundreds of these events straightened in their seats. Cameras shifted. Notebooks opened. When she finally spoke, the room didn't just go quiet. It held its breath. She didn't talk about her upcoming match. She didn't offer predictions or preview her opponent. Instead, she spoke about something far more fundamental: fairness, equal treatment, the invisible battles that professional athletes fight behind closed doors, away from court cameras and fan attention. She spoke calmly, clearly, and without hesitation, and every single word landed with the weight of someone who had been choosing their moment very carefully for a very long time. The reaction in the room was immediate and electric. Some observers praised her openly for bringing private concerns into public conversation, for saying out loud what others whispered quietly. Others questioned whether the situation warranted such a dramatic platform. But nobody in that room could deny what they had just witnessed. An ordinary press conference had been transformed into something far more significant. And just when it seemed the moment had reached its natural conclusion, Alex did something unexpected. She didn't leave. She turned toward the cameras, looked directly into them, and delivered one final message. Her voice remained steady, but her words carried the kind of emotional weight that doesn't need volume to be powerful. She spoke to the fans who had believed in her from the beginning, especially those who had traveled from across the world just to watch her compete. She spoke to anyone who had ever felt unseen, underestimated, or treated as less deserving despite working just as hard as everyone else. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was truth, delivered quietly. And that made it impossible to ignore. The room stayed silent for several seconds after she finished. Then the world woke up. Within minutes, clips from the press conference were spreading across every major social media platform. Fans who hadn't even been following the Berlin Open were suddenly watching, sharing, and talking. The conversation jumped instantly beyond tournament politics and draw revisions. People began discussing something much larger: fairness in professional sports, the invisible disadvantages some athletes carry, and what it truly costs to compete at the highest level. The response was overwhelming. Supporters flooded comment sections with messages of admiration. Many described her statement as one of the most honest and courageous things a young player had said on a public stage in recent memory. Others saw her words as something larger, a stand for every athlete who has ever been quietly overlooked while others received advantages they never had to ask for. Tennis analysts and journalists rushed to assess the significance of the moment. Some called it bold. Some called it overdue. Some questioned whether it would lead to anything concrete. But across every platform, every panel discussion, and every conversation in the Berlin Open Media Center, one name dominated: Alex Eala. Tournament officials moved quickly to contain the story. Carefully worded statements were released. Assurances were offered. Promises of review and reflection followed closely behind. But many fans weren't satisfied with careful language. They wanted answers. Real ones. Meanwhile, Alex herself had already moved on. She had said what she needed to say. She had nothing left to prove in a press conference room. Her attention shifted back to the place where everything truly gets settled: the court. And waiting for her there was a serious opponent. A player carrying momentum. Recent wins behind her, confidence in her game, and the experience to handle big moments without blinking. For Alex, there would be no easing into this tournament. No comfortable first-round warm-up to find her rhythm. The challenge was immediate, demanding, and unforgiving. The pressure surrounding her had never been greater. Every point she played would be scrutinized. Every reaction tracked. Every moment of doubt or hesitation analyzed. The spotlight that had followed her from the press conference was not going to dim when she stepped onto the court. If anything, it was going to grow brighter. Yet those closest to Alex described someone who had somehow found stillness at the center of the storm. The headlines hadn't rattled her. The debates hadn't shaken her. According to the people around her, she was locked in and laser-focused, not on the controversy, not on the cameras, but on the only thing that had always mattered. Playing tennis. Playing it well. Letting her racket answer every question. When reporters continued pressing for more comments before the match, her response was direct and uncomplicated. She had already said everything she had to say. Now the court would do the talking. And that is what made the upcoming match so genuinely compelling. This was no longer just a first-round contest between two professional players. It had become a referendum on resilience. A test of whether a player could absorb an entire week of controversy, scrutiny, and emotional weight and still perform when the moment arrived. Could she silence the noise? Could she channel everything she had been carrying into something powerful? Or would the pressure prove too heavy to carry alone? But this story has always been about more than draws and seedings and tournament politics. It has always been about something deeper. It is about determination. It is about resilience. It is about a young athlete who carries the hopes of an entire nation onto the court every single time she plays. For Alex Eala, the Berlin Open represents a pivotal moment, not just in the season, but in the larger arc of her career. A deep run could provide crucial momentum heading into the biggest tournaments of the year. An early exit could open fresh doubts and new criticism. The margins have never been this small. The consequences have never felt this significant. But those who have tracked her journey from the beginning know something important. Pressure is not new to her. She has faced doubt and overcome it. She has absorbed criticism and kept moving. She has walked into difficult rooms, difficult matches, and difficult conversations, and she has never backed down. Not once. That is why the events of this week have resonated so deeply with so many people. Because this is bigger than one tournament. It is a conversation about what athletes face when the cameras aren't rolling, about whether fairness is truly equal, and about what it means to stand up and speak when silence would have been so much easier. Alex Eala chose to speak. She refused to let others control her narrative. She refused to look the other way. She refused to pretend that everything was fine when she believed it wasn't. In doing so, she took a routine tournament week and turned it into a moment that will be remembered long after the final ball is struck in Berlin. Now comes the part that actually matters. The press conferences are over. The debates have run their course. The social media reactions have had their moment. What remains is the court, the racket, and the opponent standing across the net with everything to prove. Can Alex Eala take all of that pressure, all of that emotion, all of that noise, and turn it into fuel? Can she walk out onto that court and remind the world exactly why she belongs there? The answers are being written right now, one point at a time, under the lights of Berlin, with the entire tennis world watching every shot. And if her career has taught us anything at all, it is this: never count her out.